Making a move to curb COVID, will the risk end up moving west to the Red River? Long-term care facilities are again cracking down on visitors. Plus, what happens if the Supreme Court overturns Obamacare? Valley News Live at 10 starts right now.
Live from Fargo and serving you on TV, online and on the go. This is Valley News Live at 10.
The fear is once you lose control, once you go above 5% positivity rate and you start getting into the neighborhood we're at today of 14.4 or so for today's numbers, you start to see that line go absolutely vertical. And that type of spike will continue unless we make mitigation efforts.
New concerns for people living in Fargo after Minnesota Governor Tim Walz announced today that new COVID-19 restrictions will be put in place, including that bars and restaurants cannot allow people inside after 10 p.m. When you add Grand Forks' 11 p.m. closing time to the mix, many are concerned about the traffic and potential COVID cases showing up elsewhere, say Fargo. Valley News Team's Katie Opperly asked city leaders if they will be taking action.
Bars and restaurants are forced to close down early in the state of Minnesota starting Friday. With neighboring cities continuing to stay open, Fargo residents say people in Minnesota won't be going home after 10 p.m.
I think that we're going to get a lot more people coming over to the Fargo area and a lot of the sister cities on the border sides.
The city of Fargo does not currently have a curfew in place or a time that bars and restaurants have to close. The people of Fargo say they will begin to see the impacts if something isn't done.
What else is there to do, in their opinion, if they're not busy on the weekend? You come to Fargo and drink.
The concern is if more people are looking for a way around Minnesota's new restriction, the increased number of people in Fargo could mean a jump in COVID-19 infection.
And I think it's going to be good and bad for Fargo. I mean, it might be good business and tourism, but at the same time, too, you just got to keep that in mind with the COVID and what our level just went up to.
As Minnesota and the city of Grand Forks have recently put rules in place for closing time, Fargo Mayor Tim Mahoney says he is currently working with the city attorney's office to craft various options for consideration by the full city commission at its meeting next Monday. But until then, last call for Fargo businesses is up to them. In Fargo, Katie Opperly, Valley News Live.
Governor Walz also put other restrictions in place along with the earlier closing time, including capping restaurants' capacity at 50% or no more than 150 people. West Fargo students expected to return to full-time in-person learning by the end of this month now won't be in the classroom full-time until the end of January. Elementary students are making a switch on November 30th to 4-day in-person learning weeks with Wednesdays at home. For middle schoolers, the district plans to bring sixth graders back the week of January 11th, then wait 2 weeks and monitor the COVID numbers. If there isn't a large spike, 7th and 8th graders will be back full-time the week of January 25th. The district says that all students back in the classroom, they won't be able to ensure physical distancing. As COVID numbers continue to rise, more and more restrictions are on the way. Long-term care facilities have shut down all indoor visits as a result of community spread. Despite only making up a quarter of COVID cases statewide, those aged 6 and older make up 70% of all coronavirus hospitalizations and more than 90% of deaths. It's not just the numbers that are stacked against these facilities. It is also staffing needs. State officials say actions that the community have a direct impact on are long-term care facilities.
At this point in time, with North Dakota's positivity rate, it is having a very negative impact on long-term care, and our families need to see residents, and residents need to see them, and we need to have some normalcy in that, especially with the holidays coming up.
Officials acknowledge the fluidity of the pandemic and the numbers, saying that what they offer and set up today may be different in a month, adding that they need people to wear masks and bring down case counts, and that much of the visitation policy is based on the county's risk level. Nursing home residents are speaking out in support tonight after North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum announced healthcare workers who test positive for COVID-19 but are asymptomatic will be allowed to work in COVID units.
I firmly believe that when somebody's ill, whether it's COVID, whether it's the flu, whether it's a cold, when somebody's ill, whether it's COVID, whether it's the flu, whether it's a cold, spending time with them helps in that healing process.
Larson adds that while he understands the public's confusion, he says without the decision, both hospitals and nursing homes become extremely strained. Larson and several other local long-term care facilities that we spoke to today say their asymptomatic staff members will have their own designated entrances, exits, and bathrooms. Nearly $2 million will be spent to install air and water cleaning equipment in Fargo school buildings. Tonight, district leaders approved buying the equipment using CARES Act dollars and other grant monies. It includes installing ionization units to clear the air and water filtration systems. Fargo's school superintendent, Rupak Gandhi, says that the move shouldn't be perceived as a mitigation strategy against COVID-19. It is, however, a good strategy in providing clean air. For farmers, the story of 2020 has been about moisture. They started with too much, but field conditions quickly. While much of the harvest season is wrapped up, the next moisture concern is cold weather and what it could do to what's left. As of Friday, 93% of corn had been harvested, according to the USDA. This time last year, only 14% had been combined after a late planting season kicked back the schedule. And an early blizzard delayed harvesting. Now, with much of the crop in the bin, growers are relieved they were able to avoid a lot of the frost damage. But not everyone has been so lucky.
We have had some struggles this year again, but it seems like every year we have some type of problem, so we just learn to deal with that. That's part of the game of farming, I guess.
The drought didn't leave much moisture in the ground for the end of the year. According to the USDA, only half of North Dakota farmland had an adequate water supply. A federal judge has ruled North Dakota's anti-spoofing law is unconstitutional. State lawmakers passed a law making it a crime to disguise callers' ID numbers. U.S. District Judge Daniel Traynor struck it down yesterday, ruling that it's unconstitutional because it intrudes on interstate commerce regulation. He adds that it's impossible to determine whether the person receiving the call is physically in North Dakota. Some spoofing companies argue such practices are used for legitimate reasons, like doctors or journalists needing to protect private numbers. North Dakota attorneys say the state's law is only aimed at spoofing that's intended to defraud. Some states are joining together under the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact to do away with the Electoral College. So far, 15 states and the District of Columbia have approved the compact, adding up to 196 Electoral College votes. However, it won't be approved until enough states join to equal the 270 Electoral College votes that it takes to win a presidential election. The North Dakota GOP and the Senate Majority Leader have not responded. As the pandemic rages, a crucial case facing the United States Supreme Court. The highest court in the land heard arguments today on the future of Obamacare. If struck down, millions of Americans could be affected. Daryl Forges has the very latest.
The United States Supreme Court.
We will hear argument this morning in case 19-840, California versus Texas, and the consolidated case.
For the third time, hearing a challenge to the Affordable Care Act, this time with a 6-3 conservative majority with newly seated Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who before her time on the bench had been critical of the previous rulings.
Well, what should we make of the fact that Congress didn't repeal the provision?
At stake, health coverage for more than 20 million Americans, along with coverage for those with pre-existing conditions, and coverage for those who benefit from Medicaid expansion programs and ACA exchanges. At issue, whether or not a 2017 congressional amendment zeroing out the tax penalty for the individual mandate coverage invalidates the entire law. Attorneys for the Trump administration and other Republican state attorneys general say it does, while attorneys for the Democratic-led House of Representatives argue the law can function with or without the individual mandate, an argument that both Chief Justice John Roberts and Trump appointee Brett Kavanaugh seem to side with.
This is a very straightforward case for severability under our precedents, meaning that we would excise the mandate and leave the rest of the act in place.
The court today signaling the Affordable Care Act will likely remain in place even if they rule against the individual mandate. The hearing comes at a critical time as the nation continues to grapple with the coronavirus pandemic. I'm Daryl Forges reporting.
The makeup of the court is much different now with 3 Trump appointees, including the most recent, Amy Coney Barrett. Still ahead tonight on Valley News Live at 10. A big surprise for a Minnesota deer hunter. We'll tell you what he did when he came across a much more dangerous animal. But first, Summer is tracking snow this week. She has your full forecast right after this break.